Hello everyone, GM Admiral here with another episode of Modern Musings for the OverPower card game. We talk about all things modern, the new current format of the recently re-released OverPower collectible card game. And today's episode is all about something that's really important for all of your decks, and that is home bases. So these location cards, everybody is allowed to have one on their team, and they have different threat points that add to your overall threat value. Remember, you can have a maximum of 76 points on your team. So if your home base has some points on it, that kind of counts too. So we're going to talk a little bit about why home bases are important to have and what types of synergies you might have with other cards in the game. So we're going to start first with the round table. And before we really talk about the round tables inherent, in general, a home base gives you an opportunity, and that opportunity is to place two additional cards beyond the cards that your characters can place. Okay, so every single location can have one character special and one aspect placed to it. So if you draw two of Zoro's attacks and you play one's already placed to him, you can place another one to your home base and keep it for later if you wish. Now, the exception to that is if you are using the round table. So the round table is a new location. Notice it is 0 threat. It's free to use. And what it says is they may place any character special card to this home base, but may not place any other kinds of special cards to the round table. So in other words, if you put this on your team, you can store any character specials here. You can place them and save them for later, which could be really, really important, especially with a negate or an avoid one attack, things like that. Um, However, if you do that, none of your characters can place any specials here, so you just have to be aware of that. Still, for 0 points, it's very handy to have around. If you get your 7 brute force any character and you want to make sure that you have it in future rounds, you can place it here. Okay. So yeah. Anyway, this is a great free addition to your deck if you're playing a lot of any character cards. Next, we're going to talk about the land that time forgot. So this is what I believe potentially the most powerful home base in the game. It does cost 3 points. However, during the post-concession phase, land that time forgot may make one power card attack after the opponent has conceded. So, if your opponent says I concede, you can send one power card attack from any of your frontline characters at your opponent. So if you have that 8 placed or in hand, you can launch it at the most juicy target that you want. And that's really awesome. It also has a secondary thing, which says character KO counts before mission cards. So if you're playing a regular game of Overpower and you kill your opponent's team, but at the same time they win Venture, they win the game overall. This flips the script. This allows you to win the game overall. A couple of things to think about is this post-concession phase, you can only do one thing. You can only make one attack. So for example, if you are using Land That Time Forgot with, say, the Mummy or Jane Porter, these two specials that can be made after the opponent concedes do not stack. They do not give you an additional attack beyond the one that you would already get from Land That Time Forgot. They still work, but if you decide to send your Mummy 3 intelligence at someone after they've conceded, you just would not be able to make a power card attack from the Land That Time Forgot, which is fine. Maybe you don't have big enough power cards to launch. It is still a valid strategy to have multiple cards that can attack an opponent after they've conceded the round. But so just be prepared. You can only ever make one attack once they concede. And if it's a special card attack, you can't use the power cards from Land That Time Forgot. If you're using the Land That Time Forgot, you cannot use these special cards during the post-concession phase. Sweet. Next. Event Horizon. Event Horizon is a 1 point home base. It is pretty cool in that you get to draw a card for every single event that you draw before the battle begins. So, these are your events. And typically, most people only try to run one or two. Sometimes you can go up to three, but you really want to avoid duplicating on these in a normal game. If you have a reason to run more than like two or three of these, it might be smart to try to get Event Horizon on your team. If you get Event Horizon on your team and you draw all three of these in the same hand, you are redrawing three cards and then you get to choose which one of these you want to play. That is super, super valuable, right? It keeps you from having to discard due to duplication because all events are considered duplicates of each other. You can only ever have one in your hand. So if you don't have Event Horizon, you draw all three of these, you're discarding two of them, and now you're down a few cards. So Event Horizon allows you to kind of ignore that and make sure that you always have the same number of cards if you draw multiple events in or before the battle starts. So 1 point, it is one threat, so just keep that in mind when you're building your deck. If you got 1 point, it's worth checking into this, especially if you're using more than two events. Now, the prize packs that have recently been released have two home bases in them, and I want to share those next before I get into the last few. So the first one is called Dracula's Armory. This is an old version of the card. You notice it doesn't even have the threat down here. The new one does have the 3 threat down here. This one just says it's up here in the wording. So it says at the beginning of the game, place 3 unique basic universe cards, excluding any power, under Dracula's Armory. Once per battle, you may remove one of these cards to combine it with one legal attack or defense. So you can use this card offensively or defensively that you pull off of Dracula's Armory. And what's really valuable about this is you're essentially extending your hand by a card, right? If you don't have any discards, you have your 8 cards in hand, plus you have one of the basic universe cards on Dracula's Armory that you can use as well. Usually, you'll see like a 6+2, a 6+3, and a 7+3 attached here, based off of what characters you have. But if you have a bunch of 8s, you might want to just do an 8+3, 7+3, 6+3 basic universe card. But the 3 of them are considered placed to Dracula's Armory, so you do have to pay attention to cards that make you discard placed universe cards. Those do exist, and if they hit you, you will have to discard the place cards on Dracula's Armory as well. One little bit of synergy that I've been having so much fun with recently is this Wicked Witch card. I will have those silver shoes. And the Wicked Witch has an 8 energy, which is awesome. But this is target character must discard one place card of Wicked Witch's choice. So you do have to target a character, they can avoid it. But you can say, hey, Zoro has to discard that 8 combat card. And then the second half of this happens. So if it is successful, if I did successfully make him discard that 8 combat, Wicked Witch may search her dead pile for any basic universe card, reveal it, and place it in hand. So let's say that I use my 8+3 energy universe card off of Dracula's Army in the first battle, and then I get this off second battle. I can return that to my hand and use it to make another potentially big attack. So what's interesting about that is you're now getting additional value out of this particular card from Wicked Witch, right? Not only am I making you discard a card, probably your best, scariest card on the board, but I'm also getting a card to support myself back. So that's almost like a 2-for-1, if you will, because you're losing a card and I'm going up a card. So that's a pretty powerful effect. You do have to consider order of operations, right? And if you don't have an opportunity to get a basic universe card from your discard pile, it's still okay to fling Wicked Witch's card here if you want to get rid of something that might ruin your day. Don't feel bad about that. So yeah, I've been using this a lot, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm really excited to actually bring it to a tournament and try it out. The second home base that you can get in the prize packs, and typically when you go to a tournament or learn to play, you can get one prize pack just for showing up. And I do believe that first and second place typically get more prize packs when you go to stores that support OverPower. I happen to be an OverPower judge, so my local shop now has the prize packs to hand out during our Learn to Play events. So this is Spartan Training Ground. Again, this is an old version, but the new version has a 2 threat in the lower left-hand corner here. It does cost 2 points to get this on your team. And it's very similar to Dracula's Armory, except you use Training Universe cards instead of basic Universe cards. So the Training Universe cards are the ones that say 5 or less to get +4 to an attack or defense. And that's almost just as powerful as Dracula's Armory's basic Universe cards. So you put 3 of those under here, and if you have characters with 5s and stats, they love this battle site. Because now their 5s become 9s, which is pretty awesome. The one catch about this is it does say non any power basic training. So if you are using Sekhmet, which is the 5 or less +5 any power, this cannot be placed to Spartan Training Grounds. You can put this in your deck all you want, and which you might want to do with some strategies I'm going to show you in just a minute. But you cannot place it to Spartan Training Grounds. So just be aware of that, because some people might get caught on that. Now, what else can you do with this? Well, obviously, training cards work well with power cards, but we also have multiple cards in the current set that act as power cards. And if they act as power cards, that means that they can be used as power cards. That means that they can use universe cards just as a power card can. So Mina Harker has this 5 intelligence. Robin Hood has the 5 brute force. And then Zorro has the 5 brute force intelligence half multi that can be used to attack or defend a teammate, which is awesome. So think about that. If you're playing Zorro and you have Spartan Training Ground down, you can use one of the training grounds to make this a 9 defense. And it not only does it defend Zorro, but it also could defend his partners as well. So keep that in mind. It's very, very powerful. And of course, using a 9 to get over to a hit is pretty brutal, right? And that's a half multi-card to get on your permanent record. Not a fun thing to do. So I highly recommend, if you are playing training grounds, put a couple of these, each of these, into your deck. Especially like if you do a Robin Hood and Zorro in a deck at the same time, training ground is spectacular. Now, the last place that you can really take advantage of this is using Leonidas. Leonidas has the greatest soldiers in history. This is his uncommon card, and it is a remainder of game card, so that's really important, and it also just attaches to him. So it says, reshuffle all Training Universe cards from the dead pile into the draw pile. So if you spent any of your cards off of here, which you probably should, just every round spend one, knowing that this is coming, you get to shuffle them all back in, and they become part of your deck again, which is pretty awesome. That in its own right is cool, and it also makes me want to run this 5+5 in my deck, actually. But that's not the best part, in my opinion. It says, for the remainder of game, anytime Leonidas' team plays a Training Universe card, they may draw 1 card, discard if duplicate. So think about that for a second. Now, if you're using your training ground training cards, each time you use one, you get to draw a card to replace it. So now you're taking a card that was placed on the battlefield that was not in your hand and replacing it with a card in your hand. So that becomes pretty super powerful. I like to think of Leonidas as a 23-point character, just because I think this synergy with Spartan Training Ground is so, so good. You do have to watch out for negates and the cards that get rid of remainder of battle, remainder of game cards. But otherwise, this is really, really powerful, and lots of times people don't see it coming. Cool. Spartan Training Ground. All right, let's talk about Barsoom. Barsoom is a 0-point location. There's a lot of words on here, but the gist of this card is pretty straightforward. Basically, whenever a character on your team offensively plays a special card that increases 1 or more of their grids, you may fetch 1 power card from your draw pile usable by that character. May not be a duplicate. Then you get to reshuffle the draw pile, and all special cards that do this are now considered remainder of game instead of remainder of battle. So we'll look at that in just a minute. So basically, you want to play characters who are constantly increasing their grid value. So making their intelligence a 7, making their combat a 7. etc., etc. So let's start with probably the one that everybody loves, and that is John Carter of Mars. So John Carter has an inherent ability that lets him start with 8 brute forces in his deck, even if he wouldn't be able to use them, because of this card. Okay, John Carter's brute force grid is increased to 8 for the remainder of battle. Now this is a defensive card or an offensive card. If you use it defensively, Barsoom does not trigger. Okay, it specifically says you have to offensively play it. And it would normally be for the remainder of battle, but because Barsoom is your home base, this is forever. So you make his brute force an 8 for the game or until this is gotten rid of, right? And there are a couple of other characters that have similar specials. Deja Taurus has one that puts her energy and intelligence power grids to 7 for the remainder of battle. Now, one thing you need to consider is because increase is a mechanical effect, it's a numerical effect. Uh, if you've already increased to 7, and you play this card again, you can technically not increase to 7 again, so you cannot trigger a Barsoom a second time for playing the same special. That's something that's really important. So you can't put like 3 of these in your deck and hope to draw a power card every single time you play it. Once you've brought her up to that 7, you cannot bring her up to that 7 again unless this card is removed and it goes back down. Okay. Um, Captain Nemo has one as well that does brute force and energy. And then probably my favorite card for Barsoom, although it's also good for some other stuff too, is Mr. Hyde here. For a 16-point character, Mr. Hyde has a pretty cool special here. Increase his energy, combat, brute force by 1 for the remainder of game. Remove all hits from Mr. Hyde's permanent record. So if you are playing Barsoom, you can get 3 bonuses to your grid, then go and get any power cards you want out of the draw pile. The key is the power card must be usable by the person who used the ability. Okay, so you can't use Mr. Hyde to go get an 8 because he won't have an 8 on his grid. So that's something to pay attention to as well. Barsoom, a lot of fun. We saw some shenanigans in the Legacy tournament recently at Peace Bridge using Barsoom. So it is a fun battle site. Let's talk a bit about 221B Baker Street. So this is obviously where Sherlock Holmes lives, and it has a really cool inherent that says when you play a card that reveals, sorts, or looks at cards from opponent's hand or draw pile, you may choose one of those cards and discard it to the appropriate discard pile. So this is a very control-y type home base, and you can really build a lot of decks around it. In fact, if you're really brave, you could do something cool like even making your Cataclysm trigger 221B Baker Street, right? So this is Loki. Opponent is -3 to venture total, which is fine. But they must also reveal hand and play open handed for the remainder of battle. So one, you're already getting information from them. You'll have perfect information for the battle, and of course that will trigger Baker Street, which means they would have to discard one of those cards as well. So you are sacrificing a couple of the avoids from the Cataclysm or the 10 multi from the Cataclysm, but I think the synergy with Baker Street at least puts this Loki card in the conversation. Let's see. Who else do we have? Oh, Carson of Venus. Carson of Venus, opponent must reveal 3 cards from hand, chosen at random. That's really important too, random. Opponent must discard one of the revealed cards of opponent's choice. So my opponent shows me 3 cards, they choose a card to discard, and then, because of Baker Street, I choose a card from the discard as well. So that this special alone is discard 2 cards automatically. Probably the least most powerful and the most powerful that is revealed. And Carson Venus can play this from reserve, which is pretty brutal. Sitting on the back line, being able to do that type of manipulation. One of my favorites is the Angry Mob. Has ransom your secrets. Opponent must immediately and after each venture phase reveal hand and play open-handed for the remainder of game. So just real quick, this only triggers Baker Street the first turn that it is played. The first turn that it is played, they have to reveal their hand, and then I could force them to discard one card from it. Now, they do have the option of just discarding two cards to negate this altogether. Um, so I don't know which is more powerful for them. But if they negate this altogether by discarding two cards, your Baker Street will never actually happen. It won't actually trigger because uh, technically this card will never actually come into play if they negate it. So just be aware of that. Dr. Watson has some great stuff. First of all, Dr. Watson himself with 220B Baker Street gives you +2 to venture total every single battle, even if he's in reserve. So that right there is a reason to play him on a Baker Street team. He also has this, which he can play from reserve. Target character must reveal two cards playable by the character from hand. Opponent's choice. Now, here's the part that I don't like about this: is the opponent's choice, right? So if I'm the opponent, I choose the two worst cards in my hand that that character can play, knowing that one of them is going to be discarded. Now, oftentimes there are no bad cards, and it's really hard to deal with. In fact, I had this Dr. Watson special negated earlier this week in a game because someone didn't want me to see their hand. Uh, Watson also has this, which has to be on the front line. Basically, if it hits, you and your opponent both have to play open handed. But of course, once they open their hand, you get to make them discard a card. Invisible Man. I forgot that he had this card actually. Invisible Man has opponent must reveal hand and play open handed for the remainder of battle. Right? I'm in your house. That's a really creepy name. But this is a good way to, again, see everything that they're holding in their hands and make them discard a card. There are some other things that can happen as well with Baker Street, like Sheriff of Nottingham. Look at the top six cards of opponent's draw pile. Put any number of them on the bottom of the draw pile. So you also would get to make them discard one, but essentially setting up what their hand's going to look like next, which is kind of cool. And if you see anything super powerful in those six cards, yeah, get rid of it, which is really, really good. Let's see. What else do we have here? Oh, here's an interesting card that triggers Baker Street. Sort. This is for Sherlock Holmes. Probability evaluation. Sort through opponent's draw pile. Choose any one card and remove it from the game. Reshuffle draw pile. So you are actually going to remove two cards. One of them is removed from game, and the other one goes to the appropriate discard pile, whatever you get with Baker Street. But removing from game is pretty powerful because the cards can't even get shuffled back in. Like if you hit an 8 power card, just get it out of there and won't get shuffled in if they go to power pack, which is kind of cool. Tars has look at the top three cards of opponent's draw pile. Discard one card of Tarkus's choice into the dead pile. Then reshuffle. So you would actually look at three cards and make them discard two. Oh, yeah, and your +5 to venture total this battle. So that adds up very quickly. That's a lot of stuff that's going on in your favor if that special goes off. Merlin. I'm liking this special more and more every time I see it with Baker Street. Choose either special, universe, or power cards. Opponent must reveal all cards of the type in hand. I think a lot of people are starting to understand that holding power cards in this modern format is really important. So lots of people are holding on to their fours, fives, sixes, sometimes even their sevens to use as blocks. This could help peel away one of the high power cards if you're playing Baker Street. So pretty cool. Then we have a few attacks that help, like Sherlock Holmes has this 5 energy. If successful, opponents must reveal hand, play open handed for the remainder of battle. So this has to land. It has to not be defended, but if it does, you're making your opponent discard a card, which is pretty awesome. This one for Zorro, it's only a 4 combat, which is on suit for him, so that's kind of rough. But if it's successful, he gets to look at the top 5 cards of opponent's draw pile and discard one of them. So if you play it with Baker Street, you're actually making them discard 2, which is pretty nasty, right? You're setting up the next hand, you're getting the stuff out of there. Yeah, it's a very, very brutal card to let through. Granted, it's only a 4 combat, but if not defended, you get a huge swing in your favor. Morgan Le Fay also has a 4. This is an energy. If defended, Morgan Le Fay may look at the top 3 cards of opponent's draw pile and place them on the top or bottom in any order. So when playing with Baker Street, you also make them discard one of those cards. So Lots and lots of synergies with Baker Street. I mean, that's like what, 10 or 12 different characters that like to use Baker Street as their home base. And again, if you can get 2 triggers off of the battle site, that is well worth having it there, right? You don't have to make your entire deck based around this, and sometimes you have to sacrifice too much in order to do something like that. So instead, take your time and try to make sure that these hits land at the right times. And if you're only playing 3 or 4 cards, or even 2 cards, that would trigger the battle site, or sorry, the home base, that is fine. Okay. Same thing is true with this next and final home base. This is called Asclepion. Asclepion is also a 0-point home base, just like Baker Street and Barsoom were. This says anytime an Asclepion character plays a card that successfully removes hits from permanent record but not current battle, they may draw a card and immediately make an attack, and then discard duplicates. So let's talk about what power Asclepion has in the set, because it might have even more support than Baker Street does. First things first, we have Preternatural Healing. This is not a 1 per deck. It's in any character. So you could do 2 of these or 3 of these in a deck if you're playing Asclepion. Any character removes 1 hit from their permanent record. This card may be placed. There you go. Just pretty straightforward, right? And any character can place it too, which is pretty awesome. So if you use this to get a hit off your permanent record, you then draw a card, and then whoever used this special would need to make that attack, and that's pretty important. You also have, like Dr. Watson has removed 1 hit from permanent record or current battle, as does Ra, as does Time Traveler. Again, if you get something off of the permanent record, it's not going to trigger Asclepion, but it will help you with Venture, right? It'll take Venture away. So if you're using these, just make sure, and you want to be able to draw a card, make an attack, make sure you are looking at permanent record. What's a little bit challenging and a little bit non-intuitive, because that means that you kind of want hits to land in an early battle so that you have them as fuel later on to remove from the permanent record. Let's see, who else we got in here? John Carter has this fancy one where he removes remove all hits from John Carter's current battle and or permanent record. I like that and or a lot because that means if he has hits on his current battle, you can choose to not remove those and just remove the ones on his permanent record. That is pretty cool for triggering Asclepion. Now, when you do, as you read this card, remove hits from the permanent record, they do go in the astral plane and count towards your opponent's venture that turn. So it is a little bit of a gamble, right? Especially if you're pulling a 7 off of your permanent record. That's +7 to venture this total for your opponent. So just make sure that you're using that at the right time and on the right things. Sun Wukong, discard all place cards to remove all hits from current battle and permanent record. That's an and, not an or. So if I have a hit on my current record and I use this card, Asclepion will not trigger. Okay, so you need to be aware of that. So current battle, if there's any hits there, these will not trigger. Mr. Hyde, we already looked at this once. This was his increases energy, combat, and brute force by 1 for the remainder of the game. They remove all hits from his permanent record. Again, permanent record there, so that's great. You just have to get some hits on Mr. Hyde, and then you can get a free attack out of it. This one's my favorite, personally. Morgan Le Fay, remove all hits from the permanent record of Morgan Le Fay or target teammate. May be played from reserve. So Morgan Le Fay can be on the back line and healing the front line. Now, the one catch is when she plays this card, you do get to draw the card from Asclepion, but because Morgan Le Fay made the attack or made the removed the hit, she may not make the attack because she's in reserve. Now, if she's on the front line, does this? She can absolutely make the attack. But if you're playing it from reserve, she cannot. So just be aware of that. Next, we have a bunch of attacks that remove hits, right? Siphon Strike from Anubis is a level 5 energy. If successful, remove 1 hit from Anubis' permanent record. Oh yeah, and target character's combat attacks are -2. That's real brutal. Dracula has this one. It's a 5 combat attack. If it's successful, remove all hits from current battle and permanent record. Again, if you are removing hits from current battle, Asclepion will not trigger, so just be aware of that. The mummy has his 5 brute force. If successful, remove 1 hit from the mummy's permanent record, right? If this lands. And then both Mina Harker and the mummy have a level 7 attack that does remove a hit from current battle or permanent record. So those are both very good as well. Those are big attacks that are healing the characters up. So, um, yeah. The last thing that people often don't think about when we are looking at removing hits uh, from current battle are negates. So if you have a Merlin's Magic in your deck and you decide that any character special, and you decide to remove a special from your permanent record, or negate the effects of this special that's on your permanent record, it still counts as being removed. So if I negate this while it's on my permanent record, or I negate one of your hits that's on my permanent record, I should say, then Asclepion will trigger, which is pretty important. And when you're looking at negates, we've got Sherlock Holmes has 2 negates, right? Now, obviously, these negates have to be played offensively in order to do this. Okay, so get Sherlock Holmes in there, and if you negate a big hit, let's say you got hit by Captain Nemo's 10 energy, and you say, "Well, I don't want that on my permanent record anymore," it can cause Asclepions to trigger. Morgan Le Fay has a negate from reserve that she can do, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so she can do that as well. So she technically has 2 cards that you could remove hits with from the back line. That said, negates are sometimes used in a better way, but not all the time. You do have Mina Harker and the Mummy, who have these offensive onlys, unless you do something special. These might actually be important for removing hits as well if you have special card hits on your characters. And then of course Van Helsing has his 1 per deck negate as well. So any of these can potentially uh, get you an extra card and an extra attack using Asclepion. So yeah, so that's those are all of the home bases for the first set. They are each fun and powerful and significant. Um, First of all, you do get those 2 placing slots, right? If you want to place your 2 multi-power aspect, right? You can place it here, and then when you attack with that card, that aspect, it's not attached to any character. It comes from your home base, so anything that says avoid 1 attack made by a character or something like that cannot hit your aspects. And then you also get that second slot for if you've drawn too many specials for a character and you don't think you're going to be able to play them all, you have this little placing spot on your home base that can help you. The one catch is if the character whose special you've placed on the home base is KO'd, then that placing slot is gone. It's forever taken up by the special that you put on them. So make sure that if you do that back here on your home base, that you are also taking the time to use those cards as well. Because if that character dies or is KO'd, you don't get to use that slot anymore, which is kind of a waste. So anyway, if you like what you see, or if you saw any other synergies that I missed, because I'm sure there are some that I didn't talk about, please feel free to make a note in the comments below. If you're new and you're just learning about Overpower, go ahead and check the comments, because a lot of the regular players have been adding different ideas and insights that they've had over the last few of these videos. And you can really learn a lot by looking at those comments. Okay. If you haven't joined the Overpower Discord or Facebook groups, please go ahead and search them out. And of course, like and subscribe if you enjoy my videos. I love filming them, and I'm going to try to do many, many more around playing Modern for the Overpower card game. So that's all I got for you. Take care.